Captain Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he walked through the busy corridors of Waystation 7. The massive space station buzzed with activity from dozens of different alien species. Strange creatures with too many arms carried cargo containers. Bird-like beings with colorful feathers argued loudly in their musical language. Giant slug creatures slid along the walls, leaving trails of shiny slime behind them. Jake had been a cargo ship captain for 15 years. He knew every trade route between Earth's colonies and the outer rim planets. His ship, the Starwind, was old but reliable. It had carried everything from medical supplies to rare metals across human space. Jake thought he knew everything there. Was to know about space travel and alien trading. He was wrong. The meeting was supposed to be simple. Jake needed to arrange transport for a shipment of rare crystals from the mining world of New Texas to the research labs on Europa Station. The job would pay well, and Jake needed the money to repair his ship's aging engine systems. Commander Zexhai of the Alterian Trade Consortium had agreed to meet him at the neutral trading post. The Alterians looked like giant insects with 4 arms and compound eyes that reflected light like mirrors. Their translator devices made their clicking sounds into words that humans could understand. Jake found Zexhai in one of the station's many cantinas. The alien was sitting at a table designed for his species, with special grooves for his 4 arms and a feeding tube for the sweet nectar that Alterians preferred. Jake sat down across from him, careful not to make any sudden movements that might be seen as threatening. Captain Morrison, Zexhai clicked through his translator. I have reviewed your transport request. The Alterian Trade Consortium can provide the crystals you need. However, we must discuss the delivery route. Jake nodded and pulled out his portable navigation unit. No problem. I was thinking we could take the standard route through the Centauri system, then jump to the outer colonies through the Bremen Gateway. It's the fastest way to get to Europa Station. Zexhai's compound eyes seemed to grow darker. He activated his own holographic display, showing a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy. The familiar spiral arms appeared in the air between them, marked with different colors to show the territories of various alien civilizations. This is the current galactic map, Zexhai said. All recognized territories are clearly marked. Your human space is shown here. His clawed finger pointed to a small section of the galaxy near Earth. Jake stared at the map in confusion. According to Zexhai's display, human territory was tiny. It included Earth, the Alpha Centauri colonies, and maybe a dozen other star systems. But Jake knew this was completely wrong. He had personally delivered cargo to human colonies far beyond the boundaries shown on the alien map. That's not right, Jake said, calling up his own navigation charts on his portable unit. Look, here's Colony Beta 7 in the Perseus arm. The mining operation at Kepler Station is way out here in the Sagittarius sector. We have settlements spread across half the galaxy. Zexhai looked at Jake's charts and his whole body seemed to freeze. The alien's breathing changed, becoming rapid and shallow. His forearms began to shake slightly, and he quickly shut down his holographic display. I think there has been a mistake, Zexhai stammered through his translator. The Alterian Trade Consortium cannot provide the crystals you requested. Please excuse me. Before Jake could respond, the alien commander stood up and hurried away from the table. But as he left, Jake heard something that made his blood run cold. Zexhai was muttering to himself in his own language, but the translator was still active. The forbidden zones exist for good reason, human. Some boundaries should never be crossed. Jake sat alone at the table, staring at his navigation charts. He had traded with aliens for years without any problems. Why would showing them the locations of human colonies cause such fear? What were these forbidden zones that Zexhai had mentioned? He decided to find out. Jake spent the next 3 days on Waystation 7, talking to every alien trader, diplomat, and merchant he could find. The reactions were always the same. When he showed them his charts of human space, they would look frightened and find excuses to leave. A group of crystalline beings called the Shektar became so upset when Jake mentioned Colony Beta 7 that they started flashing bright warning colors and making high-pitched alarm sounds. A delegation of water-dwelling aquarians actually fled the station's restaurant when Jake tried to show them the location of the human underwater cities on Ocean World. The most disturbing reaction came from Ambassador Krell of the Vrex Empire. The Vrex were one of the most powerful species in the galaxy, with territories spanning hundreds of star systems. They were known for their calm, logical approach to diplomacy. Ambassador Krell had been negotiating trade agreements with humans for over a decade. When Jake approached him in the diplomatic section of the station, Krell greeted him warmly. The Vrex looked like tall, thin humans with blue skin and large, black eyes. They spoke perfect English and were considered among the most civilized races in the galaxy. "Captain Morrison, how pleasant to see you again," Krell said. "I trust your business on the station is going well?" "Actually, I wanted to ask you about something," Jake replied. He activated his navigation unit and showed Krell the star charts. "I've been having some strange reactions from other aliens when I show them the real extent of human space. Look here, this is where our colonies actually are." The change in Ambassador Krell was immediate and shocking. The dignified diplomat's face went pale blue, almost white. His large eyes grew wide with what could only be described as terror. He knocked over his drink, sending blue liquid splashing across the table. "Hi. Excuse me. Urgent business. Must go immediately." Krell babbled as he gathered his belongings and hurried away. Jake watched the ambassador flee and felt a chill run down his spine. Something was very wrong here. These weren't just random reactions from nervous traders. These were experienced diplomats and business people who dealt with humans regularly. Yet they all seemed to be hiding something about human space. On his last night at the station, Jake found himself in a dark corner of the lowest level, in a cantina that catered to smugglers and other people who preferred to avoid official attention. He was nursing a beer and trying to make sense of what he had learned when an old Kandorian approached his table. The Kandorians were reptilian beings with tough, scaly skin and intelligent yellow eyes. This one was clearly old, with scars covering his hide and a missing arm that suggested a rough life in the outer systems. He moved slowly and kept looking around as if checking for listeners. "You're the human asking questions about the maps," the old smuggler said in heavily accented English. "Name's Vec, been trading in these parts for 40 years. Jake nodded. "That's right. I'm trying to understand why every alien I talk to acts like human space is smaller than it really is." Vex slid into the seat across from Jake and ordered a drink. After the server left, he leaned close and spoke in a whisper. "You humans, you don't know what you are, do you?" Vex's yellow eyes gleamed in the dim light. "The Council of Worlds, all the major species, we made a decision long ago. Your space ends where we say it ends on our maps. What lies beyond those boundaries is your business, but we don't want to know about it." Jake felt his heart start beating. "Faster. What do you mean you don't want to know about it?" The old Kandorian took a long drink and stared at Jake for a moment. "Some things are better left alone, human. Some sleeping giants should never be awakened. Your people have been very quiet about what lies in the dark spaces beyond your official borders. We're all grateful for that silence." Before Jake could ask another question, Vex stood up and dropped some credits on the table. "Advice from an old smuggler, Captain. Stop asking questions about the maps. Some truths are too dangerous to know." With that warning, the Kandorian limped away into the shadows, leaving Jake alone with more questions than answers. Dr. Linda Hayes sat in her office on Earth, reading Captain Jake Morrison's report for the third time. The morning sun streamed through the windows of the Terran Diplomatic Corps building in Geneva, but Linda barely noticed the beautiful view of Lake Geneva. Her mind was focused on the disturbing information contained in Jake's detailed account of his experiences at West Station 7. Linda had worked as a xenosociologist for the Diplomatic Corps for 3 years. Her job was to study alien cultures and help human diplomats understand how to work with different species. She had written reports on 17 different alien civilizations, helped negotiate trade agreements, and advised on cultural exchange programs. She thought she understood how the galaxy worked. Jake Morrison's report suggested she was completely wrong, according to Jake. Every alien species in the galaxy believed that human space was much smaller than it actually was. Their official maps showed human territory as a tiny area around Earth, while the reality was that human colonies stretched across thousands of star systems. More disturbing was the fear that aliens showed when confronted with the truth about human expansion. Linda had met Jake when he returned from Waystation 7 and demanded a meeting with someone in the diplomatic corps. He was a simple cargo ship captain, not someone who would normally have access to high-level government officials. But his story was so strange and concerning that Linda's supervisor had assigned her to interview him. Jake had seemed honest and reliable. He provided detailed records from his ship's navigation computer, showing the locations of human colonies that he had visited personally. He also had recordings of some of his conversations with aliens at the station, including the frightened reactions when he showed them his star charts. But if Jake was telling the truth, it meant that Linda's entire understanding of human-alien relations was built on a lie. She decided to investigate. Linda began by checking the official records of human expansion into space. The public databases showed colonies in hundreds of star systems spread across multiple spiral arms of the galaxy. Mining operations, research stations, and settled worlds existed far beyond the boundaries that Jake had seen on alien maps. Next, she contacted human diplomats who worked regularly with alien governments. She asked carefully worded questions about territorial boundaries and mapping discrepancies. The responses were puzzling. Most diplomats said they had never discussed the extent of human space with their alien counterparts. Those who had mentioned it reported that aliens seemed uncomfortable with the topic and preferred to focus on trade relationships within the established borders near Earth. Linda's breakthrough came when she decided to examine the historical records. From the early days of first contact with alien civilizations, she requested access to classified archives from 40 years ago. When humans first encountered other intelligent species in space, the archival office was located deep beneath the diplomatic corps building. Linda had never been down there before. The elderly archivist, a thin man named George who had worked for the government for decades, seemed surprised by her request for such old files. "These records are heavily classified," George warned her as he led her through rows of sealed storage units. "Most of the material from the first contact period is restricted to only the highest security levels. Are you sure you have authorization for this?" Linda showed him her research permit, signed by her supervisor. George studied it carefully, then shrugged and began pulling files from the storage system. The documents he provided were fascinating and disturbing. Linda spent hours reading through diplomatic cables, military reports, and meeting transcripts from humanity's first encounters with alien civilizations. Much of the material was heavily redacted, with entire paragraphs blacked out by censors, but certain phrases appeared repeatedly throughout the documents, even in the censored sections. Linda made a list of the words and terms that kept showing up: acceptable losses, containment protocols, territorial agreements, non-disclosure, arrangements, and most mysterious of all, the others must never know. One document in particular caught her attention. It was a summary of a meeting between human diplomats and representatives from several alien species, dated 38 years ago. The subject line read, "Final Territorial Arrangements, Project Boundaries." Most of the content was blacked out, but Linda could make out a few sentences. All parties agree that official recognition of human territorial claims will be limited to the designated sectors. Extended human presence in the outer regions will not be acknowledged in galactic mapping systems. This arrangement serves the interests of all signatories and ensures continued stability in the region. The document was signed by officials from Earth's government and representatives from 12 different alien species, including the Alterians, the Vrex, and the Kandorians. Linda stared at the document in shock. It seemed to confirm Jake Morrison's story. There had been some kind of agreement to hide the true extent of human space from the galaxy's official records. But why would humans agree to such an arrangement? What benefit could there be to appearing smaller and weaker than they actually
Were?
She needed to find someone who had been present during those early negotiations. Linda spent 2 days searching through personnel records, looking for diplomatic corps employees who had served during the first contact period. Most of the senior officials from that time were dead or retired, but she found one name that appeared repeatedly in the historical documents: Colonel Pete Walker, formerly of the Space Defense Force, according to his service record. Pete Walker had been present at many of the early meetings with alien representatives. He had served as military liaison during the territorial negotiations. He was listed as retired, living on a ranch on the colony world of New Montana. Linda requested permission to travel to New Montana to interview the former colonel. Her supervisor was reluctant to approve the trip, asking many questions about why she needed to speak with a retired military officer about current diplomatic issues. But Linda convinced him that understanding the historical background of human-alien relations was important for her current research projects. The journey to New Montana took 3 days by commercial transport. Linda had never been to the outer colonies before, and she was amazed by the size and sophistication of the settlements she saw during the journey. Massive space stations orbited gas giants, harvesting fuel and rare elements. Entire moons had been converted into industrial complexes. Artificial habitats housed millions of people in the empty spaces between stars. If this was what human civilization looked like beyond the official boundaries, no wonder the aliens wanted to pretend it didn't exist. New Montana was a beautiful world with purple grass and 2 small suns. Pete Walker's ranch was located in a valley surrounded by low hills, where he raised cattle that had been genetically modified to thrive in the alien environment. Linda found him repairing a fence behind his house, working with the slow, careful movements of a man who had seen too much in his younger years. Pete Walker was in his 70s, with gray hair and weathered skin that spoke of decades spent outdoors. When Linda introduced herself and explained why she had come, his reaction was immediate and defensive. "I don't talk about the old days," he said firmly. "That's all classified information, and it's going to stay classified. You're wasting your time coming here." Linda showed him Jake Morrison's report and some of the declassified documents she had found in the archives. Pete read them carefully, his expression growing more troubled with each page. "Where did you get these?" he asked finally. "From the official archives. And this report came from a cargo ship captain who stumbled onto something strange during a routine trading mission." Pete was quiet for a long time, staring out at his cattle grazing in the purple grass. The alien suns were setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and red that Earth had never seen. "You want to know why the aliens are scared?" he said finally. "You want to know why they pretend human space is smaller than it really is?" Linda nodded. Pete Walker looked at her with eyes that held decades of secrets. "Because they know what we did to get our space in the first place. And they're terrified that we might do it again." He turned and walked toward his house, leaving Linda standing alone in the alien twilight, with more questions than answers and the growing certainty that the truth about humanity's place in the galaxy was far more complex and dangerous than she had ever imagined. The next morning, Pete Walker agreed to tell her the whole story. Colonel Pete Walker sat on his porch, watching the purple grass wave in the gentle breeze. Dr. Linda Hayes sat across from him, waiting patiently as the old soldier gathered his thoughts. 3 days had passed since she arrived at his ranch on New Montana, and Pete had finally agreed to tell her the truth about humanity's early expansion into space. "The history books lie," Pete said quietly, his weathered hands wrapped around a cup of coffee. "First contact wasn't a peaceful meeting. They teach in schools. When we reached the stars, we found out we weren't welcome." Linda leaned forward, her recording device ready. She had been waiting for this moment since she discovered the classified documents in the archives. The truth about humanity's relationship with the galaxy was finally going to be revealed. Pete stared out at the distant mountains, his eyes seeing events from decades ago. "I was a young lieutenant back then, fresh out of the academy and eager to explore the galaxy. We thought we were going to meet friendly aliens who would welcome us into their galactic community. We were wrong about everything." The story Pete told was nothing like the official history that Linda had studied. According to the textbooks, first contact had been made when human explorers met peaceful alien traders near the Centauri system. The aliens had been curious about the new species and had invited humans to join the galactic community as junior partners. The reality was completely different. We built our first colonies without knowing there were aliens out there, Pete continued. We were just expanding, looking for new worlds to settle and resources to exploit. Then we ran into the Corvan Empire near Rigel, and everything changed. The Corvan were an old species that had been traveling between stars for thousands of years. They had established territories throughout the galaxy and considered themselves the rightful rulers of entire sectors of space. When human colonists arrived, in systems that the Corvan claimed as their own, the aliens demanded that the humans leave immediately. The Corvan sent us a message, Pete said. They told us that humans were not authorized to establish colonies in their territory. They said we needed to apply for permission through something called the Council of Worlds, and that the process would take decades. In the meantime, all human settlements beyond the Sol system had to be abandoned. The human government's response had been simple and direct. They told the Corvan that human colonies would remain where they were, and that any attempt to remove them would be considered an act of war. The Corvan couldn't believe it, Pete said with a bitter smile. They had been dealing with other species for centuries, and everyone always backed down when faced with superior numbers. They thought humans would be the same. The Corvan Empire controlled hundreds of star systems and had military forces that outnumbered human ships by more than 50 to 1. They had fought wars against other alien species and always won through overwhelming force. The idea that a small, new species like humanity would dare to challenge them seemed impossible. The Corvan decided to teach humans a lesson. They assembled a fleet of over 200 ships, Pete said. Battleships, cruisers, destroyers, and support vessels. It was the largest military force they had ever assembled for a single operation. They called it the Punishment Fleet, and its mission was to destroy every human colony beyond Earth. The fleet arrived at Rigel 7, a human mining colony with a population of 50,000 people. The Corvan commander sent a final message to the colony, demanding surrender and evacuation. The human response was broadcast across the galaxy. Governor Martinez told them to go to hell, Pete said. Those were his exact words. The Corvan couldn't believe it. They had expected the humans to beg for mercy or try to negotiate. Instead, they got defiance. The Battle of Rigel 7 began 3 hours later. The Corvan fleet attacked the human colony with overwhelming force, expecting to destroy the small human defense force within minutes. The colony was protected by only 12 human warships, ancient vessels that had been converted from cargo haulers and mining ships. Against 200 Corvan battleships, the humans had no chance of victory, but humans didn't fight like other species. The Corvan expected a traditional battle, Pete explained. They thought our ships would form defensive lines and try to protect the colony. Instead, our captains split into small groups and attacked the Corvan fleet directly. They used suicide, runs, ramming attacks, and tactics that no civilized species would ever consider. The human ships were smaller and less powerful than the Corvan vessels, but they were faster and more maneuverable. More importantly, their crews fought with a desperation and violence that shocked the alien commanders. Human ships that were badly damaged would ram themselves into Corvan vessels, destroying both ships in massive explosions. Captain Rodriguez of the destroyer Valor managed to take out 3 Corvan battleships before his ship was destroyed, Pete said. He crashed his ship into their command vessel at full speed. The explosion was so big it damaged 6 other ships nearby. The battle lasted 18 hours. When it was over, the Corvan fleet had been completely destroyed. All 200 ships were either destroyed or so badly damaged that they could never fight again. The humans had lost all 12 of their warships, but the colony survived. The galaxy had never seen anything like it, Pete said. The Corvan were one of the most powerful species in known space, and humans had just destroyed their entire fleet. The news spread to every alien civilization within weeks. But the real shock came when humanity's response to the attack became known throughout the galaxy. The Corvan thought the battle was over, Pete continued. They expected humans to be grateful that the colony had survived and to accept whatever terms the Council of Worlds offered. Instead, we declared war on the entire Corvan Empire. Within 6 months, human forces had launched attacks on 12 Corvan worlds. The humans didn't just target military installations. They attacked everything. Civilian colonies, trading posts, research stations, and industrial facilities were all destroyed. Without mercy. We didn't fight to win territory, Pete explained. We fought to eliminate threats. When we took a Corvan world, we didn't occupy it, we destroyed everything on it and left it empty. The Corvan couldn't understand that kind of warfare. The Corvan Empire had ruled hundreds of worlds for thousands of years. They had fought many wars against other alien species, but those conflicts had always followed certain rules. Military targets were attacked, but civilian populations were usually spared. Conquered worlds were occupied and their resources exploited. But the original inhabitants were allowed to live under the new rulers. Humans ignored all of those rules. The Corvan tried to negotiate after we destroyed their 6th world, Pete said. They offered to recognize human territorial claims and pay tribute for the damage they had caused. We told them it was too late for negotiations. The war lasted 2 years. When it ended, the Corvan Empire no longer existed. Their homeworld was a burned wasteland, their colonies were empty ruins, and their entire species had been reduced to a few thousand refugees scattered across the galaxy. The Council of Worlds was terrified, Pete said. They had never encountered a species like us. Most races expanded slowly, negotiated carefully, and followed the established rules. We took what we wanted and destroyed anyone who tried to stop. The other alien species realized that they had a choice to make. They could try to fight humanity and risk the same fate as the Corvan, or they could find a way to coexist with the dangerous new species that had appeared in their galaxy. That's when they came to us with the deal, Pete said. They offered to let us expand as far as we wanted in certain directions, claiming any territory we could hold. In exchange, they would pretend that human space officially ended wherever. They chose to draw the line on their maps. Linda finally understood the secret that Jake Morrison had stumbled upon. The aliens weren't just hiding the extent of human territory from their own people. They were hiding from the truth about what humans were capable of when threatened. They gave us room to grow, Pete concluded, and we gave them the comfortable lie that we were still a small, containable species. Everyone got what they wanted, and the galaxy stayed peaceful. But Linda could see the worry in the old soldier's eyes. The arrangement had worked for 40 years, but secrets this big couldn't stay hidden forever. And when the truth finally came out, the consequences would shake the entire galaxy. Admiral Kate Ross stood at the observation deck of Guardian Station, staring out at the stars. The massive orbital defense platform circled Earth like a silent guardian, its weapons pointed toward the darkness of space. Kate had been 17 years old when the Corvan War ended, a cadet at the Luna Naval Academy when humanity's true nature was revealed to the galaxy. Now, at 57, she was Earth's highest-ranking military officer and one of only 12 people who knew the complete truth about humanity's secret arrangement with the galactic community, the emergency meeting request from Dr. Linda Hayes. And Captain Jake Morrison had been sitting on her desk for 3 days. Kate knew what they wanted to discuss. Reports had been filtering up through the intelligence networks about their investigation into the mapping discrepancies. The secret that had been carefully guarded for 40 years was finally coming to light. Kate had been dreading this day for decades, but she also felt a strange sense of relief. The weight of the truth had grown heavier with each passing year. Every time she met with alien diplomats, every time she signed trade agreements or discussed territorial boundaries, she was part of the elaborate lie that kept the galaxy peaceful. But lies, even necessary ones, had a way of becoming burdens. She turned away from the observation window and walked to her office. Dr. Hayes and Captain Morrison were already waiting for her, sitting nervously in the chairs across from her desk. Kate could see the questions in their eyes, the mixture of curiosity and fear that came with learning dangerous truths. "I know why you're here," Kate said as she sat down behind her desk. "You've discovered that the official maps of human space don't match reality. You want to know why the galaxy's other species pretend that our colonies beyond the designated boundaries don't exist." Linda Hayes leaned forward in her chair. "Colonel Walker told us about the Corvan War and the arrangement that followed. But I need to understand how this system actually works. How do we maintain such a massive deception?" Kate opened a secure file on her computer and turned the screen so her visitors could see it. The display showed a three-dimensional map of the galaxy with different colored sections marking various territories. The human section was enormous, stretching across multiple spiral arms and encompassing thousands of star systems. "This is the real map," Kate said. "Human civilization now spans roughly 40% of the galaxy. We have colonies on 12,000 worlds, mining operations in 3,000 star systems, and research stations scattered throughout the outer rim. Our population is approaching 200 billion people." Jake Morrison stared at the map in amazement. "I knew we were bigger than the alien map showed, but this is incredible. We're not just a major power in the galaxy. We're the dominant force." "That's exactly right," Kate confirmed. "And that's exactly why the other species are so afraid of us. They remember what happened to the Corvan, and they're terrified that they might be next." Kate explained how the secret arrangement worked. In practice, the galaxy was divided into two types of space: recognized territory and shadow territory. Recognized territory included the areas around Earth and the older human colonies, the ones that appeared on official alien maps. Shadow territory was everything else that humans controlled, the vast empire that officially didn't exist. "We maintain separate governments for the two regions," Kate said. "The Terran Federation handles all official diplomatic relations with alien species. They only acknowledge colonies and activities within recognized territory. Meanwhile, the colonial administration manages everything in shadow territory, but they have no official contact with alien governments. The system required careful coordination between thousands of officials across human space. Diplomats, traders, and military officers all had to be briefed on which colonies and activities they could mention when dealing with aliens. Ship captains like Jake Morrison usually weren't told about the arrangement because their routes normally stayed within recognized territory. But sometimes people stumble onto the truth," Kate said. "When that happens, we have to decide whether to bring them into the secret or find ways to discredit their discoveries." Linda Hayes looked troubled. "How many people know about this arrangement?" "On the human side, maybe 50,000 people have full knowledge of the situation," Kate replied. "They're mostly high-level government officials, military commanders, and intelligence officers. Another 1,000,000 or so have partial knowledge, enough to do their jobs, but not enough to understand the complete picture." The number of aliens who knew the truth was much smaller. The Council of Worlds included representatives from 37 different species, but only the senior leadership of about a dozen species were fully informed about the arrangement. Most alien populations believed that humanity was still a minor power confined to a small area near Earth. "The system works because everyone benefits from it," Kate explained. "The alien governments get to tell their people that humanity is contained and manageable. We get to expand freely without interference. And the galaxy stays peaceful because no one has to confront the reality of human dominance." But Kate could see problems developing with the arrangement. Human expansion was accelerating as new technologies made it easier to travel between stars and establish colonies on distant worlds. The shadow territory was becoming so large that it was getting harder to hide from casual observation. "We've had to become more creative about maintaining the deception," Kate said. "We use fake identification codes for ships traveling in shadow territory. We maintain separate communication networks so alien monitoring stations don't detect our transmissions. We even have dummy colonies in recognized territory that exist mainly to provide cover stories for our real activities. The most dangerous problem was the growing number of humans who were discovering the truth by accident. Traders like Jake Morrison were encountering aliens who reacted strangely to information about human colonies. Researchers like Linda Hayes were finding inconsistencies in historical records. Young people raised in shadow territory colonies sometimes traveled to recognized territory without understanding that they were supposed to pretend their homeworlds didn't exist. Each discovery increases the risk that the secret will become public knowledge, Kate said. If enough people start asking questions, we won't be able to maintain the lie anymore. Jake Morrison had been quiet during most of the conversation, but now he spoke up. What happens if the truth comes out? What if the alien populations learn that humans control half the galaxy? Kate's expression grew grim. That's the question that keeps me awake at night. We've run computer simulations and war games to try to predict the consequences. The results are never good. The most likely scenario was political chaos across alien civilizations. Populations would demand to know why their governments had been lying to them for decades. Some species might panic and try to flee from human-controlled regions. Others might become angry and demand military action against humanity. The worst-case scenario is a galaxy-wide war, Kate said. If enough alien species decide that humanity has become too dangerous to tolerate, they might form a coalition to try to destroy us. We would probably win such a war, but the cost in lives and resources would be enormous. There was also the possibility that some alien species would try to negotiate new arrangements with humanity, seeking better terms now that they understood the true balance of power. But such negotiations would be complicated by the decades of deception that had shaped current relationships. We've been preparing for these possibilities, Kate said. We have contingency plans for defending human space if the arrangement breaks down. We've also been working on ways to gradually reveal the truth in a controlled manner, if that becomes necessary. Linda Hayes looked thoughtful. Is there any way to maintain the current system indefinitely? Kate shook her head. The arrangement was designed for a smaller, simpler galaxy. Human expansion has accelerated far beyond what anyone expected 40 years ago. We're reaching the point where the deception becomes impossible to maintain. She pulled up another file on her computer, showing intelligence reports from across human space. More traders were encountering mapping discrepancies. More researchers were finding historical inconsistencies. More young people were asking uncomfortable questions about why alien maps showed empty space where they knew human colonies existed. We estimate that we have maybe 5 to 10 years before the secret becomes public knowledge, Kate said. After that, we'll have to deal with the consequences whether we're ready or not. The room fell silent as all three of them contemplated the implications of what Kate had revealed. The comfortable lie that had kept the galaxy peaceful for 4 decades was beginning to crumble, and no one knew what would replace it. Outside the observation windows of Guardian Station, the stars continued to shine in the darkness, unaware that the balance of power in the galaxy was about to shift in ways that would change everything forever. President Helen Carter stood at the head of the Security Council table in the underground bunker beneath the White House. The emergency session had been called after Admiral Kate Ross's meeting with Dr. Linda Hayes and Captain Jake Morrison. Around the table sat the most powerful people in human space: military commanders, intelligence directors, diplomatic corps leaders, and colonial administrators from both recognized and shadow territories. The revelation that Captain Morrison had stumbled onto the galactic mapping conspiracy had created a crisis that reached the highest levels of Earth's government. For 40 years, the secret arrangement with alien species had allowed humanity to expand freely while maintaining the illusion of being a minor galactic power. Now that secret was in danger of being exposed, and the consequences could reshape the entire galaxy. General Robert Davis, head of the Space Defense Force, spoke first. We've identified 17 other incidents in the past year where humans have encountered similar mapping discrepancies. Traders, researchers, and even tourists are starting to notice that alien maps don't match reality. We can't silence all of them. Director Susan Blake from the Intelligence Service added her own concerns. Our monitoring stations have detected increased chatter among alien intelligence agencies. They're starting to investigate discrepancies in their own records. The Vrex Empire has assigned a special task force to study territorial mapping inconsistencies. It's only a matter of time before they figure out what's really happening. President Carter looked around the table at the faces of her advisors. These were the people responsible for maintaining one of the largest deceptions in galactic history. The weight of their secret had grown heavier with each passing year as human expansion accelerated, beyond anything the original negotiators had imagined. Let's be clear about our options, Carter said. We can try to maintain the current arrangement. We can begin a gradual disclosure of the truth, or we can prepare for full exposure. Each choice carries enormous risks. Dr. Linda Hayes had been invited to attend the meeting as the person who had uncovered much of the historical background. She sat quietly at the end of the table, still struggling to understand how she had become involved in such a momentous decision. Madam President, Linda said, I believe we need to consider the moral implications of continuing this deception. We're lying to billions of intelligent beings about the fundamental structure of their galaxy. How can we build lasting peace on such a foundation? Admiral Kate Ross disagreed strongly. The current arrangement has given us 40 years of unprecedented expansion and prosperity. Human civilization has grown from a few million people on a dozen worlds to 200 billion people on 12,000 worlds. We've achieved this without major wars or catastrophic losses. Why would we risk destroying something that works so well? The debate that followed revealed deep divisions among Earth's leadership about humanity's future relationship with the galaxy. Some officials argued for maintaining the secret at all costs, believing that the truth would inevitably lead to conflict with alien species. Others pushed for gradual disclosure, suggesting that careful management could minimize the dangers of revelation. Captain Jake Morrison, who had unknowingly started the current crisis, offered a different perspective. What if we're not the only ones keeping secrets? What if there are other species out there, beyond the edges of even our maps, who are watching all of us the same way we're watching the council races? The idea sent a chill through the room. Human expansion had been rapid and aggressive, but it had focused on areas that alien maps showed as empty or unexplored. If those regions were actually inhabited by species that chose to remain hidden, humanity might have unknowingly provoked conflicts that hadn't yet erupted. Our deep space monitoring stations have detected signals from beyond our furthest colonies, admitted Director Blake. We've assumed they were natural phenomena or equipment malfunctions, but some of the patterns suggest artificial origins. If there are other civilizations out there, they've been very quiet about their existence. Foreign Minister Charles Wright, who had spent decades managing relationships with alien governments, raised another concern. We need to consider what happens to our existing trade relationships and diplomatic agreements if the truth comes out. The economic disruption alone could cause massive suffering across human space. Human civilization had become deeply integrated with galactic commerce over the past 4 decades. Raw materials from human colonies were processed in alien factories and sold throughout the galaxy. Human-manufactured goods were traded for alien technologies and luxury items. Millions of jobs depended on maintaining stable relationships with species that might react badly to learning about the deception. President Carter listened to all the arguments before making her decision. The weight of responsibility for 200 billion human lives pressed down on her shoulders as she considered the options. Whatever choice she made would affect not just humanity, but the entire galactic community. We will maintain the current arrangement, Carter announced, but with significant modifications. The secret will be preserved, but we'll begin creating a network of informed individuals who can help manage the deception while watching for signs that the system is failing. The President's plan involved carefully selecting humans across all levels of society and gradually briefing them on the truth. Traitors like Jake Morrison would be brought into the conspiracy rather than silenced. Researchers like Linda Hayes would be given access to classified information and assigned to monitor alien reactions. Military officers would receive enhanced training on maintaining operational security in shadow territory. We'll also begin subtle preparations for the day when the truth inevitably comes to light, Carter continued. New colonies will be established, with stronger defenses. Trade relationships will be diversified to reduce our dependence on alien partners. Most importantly, the Space Defense Force will develop contingency plans for what might happen if the galaxy's other powers decide that humanity has grown too large to ignore. Admiral Ross nodded in agreement. We've already begun expanding our fleet and improving our weapons technology. If the arrangement breaks down, we need to be ready to defend every human world from potential retaliation. The meeting concluded with assignments for each department to begin implementing the new policies. The secret would be maintained, but with a much larger number of people aware of the truth and prepared to manage the consequences when the deception finally ended. As the officials filed out of the bunker, Jake Morrison found himself walking beside Dr. Hayes. Both of them were still struggling to understand how a routine cargo run and academic research project had led them to the highest levels of government. "Do you think we made the right choice?" Linda asked. Jake looked back at the heavily guarded entrance to the bunker, thinking about all the secrets buried beneath the ground. "I don't know if there was a right choice. But at least now more people will know the truth and be ready for whatever comes next." 6 months later, Jake Morrison returned to his cargo runs between human colonies, but now he carried special identification, codes that marked him as part of the conspiracy. His routes took him to shadow territory worlds that officially didn't exist, carrying supplies to colonies that alien maps showed as empty space. Dr. Linda Hayes continued her work as a xenosociologist, but now she had access to classified information about alien species and their true knowledge of human expansion. She monitored diplomatic communications for signs that other species were questioning the official territorial boundaries. Admiral Kate Ross expanded her fleet and began training exercises designed to prepare for galaxy-wide conflict. New weapons were developed in secret facilities hidden throughout shadow territory, ready to defend human civilization if the careful balance of power finally shifted. The galactic map still ended at humanity's official borders, and everyone was still too scared to ask why. But now thousands of humans knew the answer to that question, and they were preparing for the day when the rest of the galaxy would learn it too. In the depths of space, human colonies continued to spread across the stars, each new world another secret that the galaxy chose not to see. The arrangement suited everyone involved, but like all deceptions built on fear and mutual benefit, it carried within itself the certainty of eventual discovery. The only question was whether humanity would be ready when that day finally came, and whether the galaxy would survive the truth about who really controlled the stars.